What's up, Hammer?
What's going on, gentlemen?
I like that Kings Beat shirt too.
Yeah, that's nice.
I don't know. We're
Good
just
stuff.
figuring stuff out, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
no, but Luka actually got hurt in his defense. Like he actually got like banged up. I don't think they're trying to stall him out.
He ain't never hurt until he started playing bad. Like he was cooking and doing all this other stuff and yelling at the crowd, talking about I'm crazy and all this other stuff. And then he started playing bad. Oh, he's not 100%.
No, I don't think that's.
Let's not do that.
I don't think that's fair.
Are you injured or are you hurt? Yes. No, I don't hate him.
Hurt.
But
He's hurt. He's not injured clearly because he's playing, but he's hurt. But
Yeah.
my point was, I think a lot of guys are hurt.
It's
think
crazy. Like
Joel
everybody.
Embiid is damn near dead. Dude is like I felt so. I don't think I have ever felt worse for an athlete. I felt so bad for Joe last night. I didn't know till the game started that he missed shoot around because of the migraines. And as someone who's had headaches for the better part of like 30 years at this point, I don't know if like what kind of discomfort he was in last night, but watching him do like those little like things that you do to just try to relieve like a little bit of pressure on your head. I felt so bad for him, and I'm sure it's related to the Bell's palsy, the nerve issue he's having. On top of the fact his knee is jacked up.
Do you guys think
and you hate him? You come in here the next day trying to get rid of him.
I didn't try to get. I said we got to have a conversation. Do you guys think he's a dirty player?
I think. Go ahead, James. You can answer that first.
I think he's doing everything in his power to try to win games.
I think
he slapped Brunson in the head.
Sometimes that means you gotta go out there and
what are you doing?
Get a little crazy. Yeah.
I think he's now.
Oh,
I think what it is. I think he knows like he's jacked up and he's almost like acting out. Like, you know what I mean? Because Jordan, what he did to Mitchell Robinson, he's never done anything like that before.
Nah, not that I could think
next
of.
level.
He's never like that was awful. Like he's never done that before.
I don't think he's a dirty player. He's done some questionable stuff.
The
series,
incidents are starting to add up in the series. But I think he's wounded and he's acting out.
Yeah, that could be the case. That could be the case.
I don't know what this season is going to do for him long term, because it sure does look like this season is going to take 3 years off whatever he had left of his career. So if he had 5 years left, I don't think he's going to last much longer at the level that he is. Just brutal what we're watching from him.
So I'll bring this full circle again. Damian yelled at me and threw me out of the studio, much like Jazz and Fresh Prince earlier in the show.
It was a fight. It was an argument.
Because I said, after this season, I think it doesn't have to be public. We don't have to tell Woj or anything else like that. But I think the Sixers front office maybe should have a conversation about, do we hand this all the way over to Tyrese Maxey and look to move Joel Embiid? And that's kind of not that Joel is the problem or not an MVP caliber player. He's breaking down in front of our very eyes. And if maybe Bill Walsh get rid of a guy a year too early as opposed to a year too late, do you have those discussions? Is that fair to have those discussions this offseason?
Well, I would tell you Daryl Morey is like one of the true star chasing GMs that there ever was. And I don't see him moving off of a star. I just don't think he could do it. So, I mean, I think the idea, sure, you have to like look at everything when you're a team that very well could get bounced in the first round. But I also like look at the hard roster reset that they can do this offseason. Like the only two guys under contract, and they're not even under contract. Like Embiid's under contract. Maxey is like a $6 million. Like they have to extend the qualifying offer, and that means he only counts $6 million against the cap until he counts for 28 million once you sign him. So what you can do in that situation is you can go out there and just go crazy in the free agent market and sign everybody and anyone that you want, and then bring Maxey back after you do all of that. And so I expect them to be like super aggressive trying to reboot that roster. And I don't think you look at the other like 13 dudes on that roster. Like, is there anyone that you need back? I don't think so. Like
Buddy.
Tobias Harris, solid NBA player, and if he wants to play for $15 million a year, okay. But outside of that, no, there's nothing else there that you really are looking at that you think that you need to reserve. Certainly, I mean, Buddy Hield, they won't even put in the game, and game 4 and game 5. Like, they're not bringing a bunch of those guys back. So I expect them to like try this one more time, but with a full, supporting cast reset if they can do it.
Hey, we get our jokes off. Tyrese Maxey gave Buddy a lot of credit for Tyrese was in a bad moment.
Leadership.
And Buddy snapped him out of it and said, "Hey, come on, man, you gotta lead us the rest of the way. Like, put that stuff behind you and get out there and do you." And it was enough to where Tyrese addressed it in the post-game press conference. So want to be fair to Buddy, man. Now, that's not reason enough to bring him back on a contract, but we get our jokes off, and I want to make sure that we show Buddy some love, because Tyrese was willing to acknowledge that was a big moment for him. And that was a hell of a moment for Tyrese. I'll admit, everybody gets to be prisoners of the moment. I will be too. I'm not sure that the series is over.
Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I understand, and that's perfectly fair. I'm not there yet. I'm not. Well, that's not true. I was there. I was right there. I was in the same car with you. Now I'm like,
now you're hanging out the window.
Hanging out the side of my best friend's ride.
So let me out, though.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just like, I'm tapped into Game 6. I'm excited for Game 6.
Tapped into Game 6.
Yeah, because I think Embiid and Maxey can go for 80 combined, and you have two players that can do that. So, all right, like, it's not like you can't get the other, get some production out of everybody else, and that's going to put you in the ball game. And again, the Knicks, they really heavily rely on the 3-point shot. It's a 3-point shot, and then whatever Jalen Brunson can do, and then they're going to out rebound you to death. So if you can try to clean up the rebounding and they have a bad shooting night, it's going to be like game on. I wouldn't be shocked if that goes 7. And then if it goes 7, who the heck knows what happens in a game 7? Like,
Philadelphia fans better somehow get to the Garden after what New York fans did.
New York ain't letting people go. Game 7 in the Garden on a Saturday night. Yeah, they really ain't getting in there.
Give me that, by the way.
That'd be fire.
Give me that.
That'd be fire. I don't know if I want to deal with that, because I don't like the Sixers. So I don't want to give them a chance. Get it done on Thursday.
I got you. Got you. Well, Nick, by the way, Brad Stevens won Executive of the Year. I think that's cool because they actually gave the Celtics some acknowledgement for being the best team in the league all year. James, did you vote in this?
No.
I know you didn't. Someone gave Monty McNair a first place vote.
Well,
that's how we opened yesterday's show.
Yeah,
Kyle went out that pretty heavily.
Yeah, look, man, I gotta have some integrity here. That's asinine.
I have an idea.
I love that's asinine.
I have an idea. It's the only vote he got, by the way. One first place vote. I have an idea. When it comes to these postseason awards, when it comes to these all NBA selections and all of that, this is the rule. Writers, podcasters, television hosts, whatever. The new NBA mandate to go into effect with the new TV deal.
Get some of that money.
If you write content on your votes, you lose your vote. I've told you from jump, I think people use this as a way to, hey, who voted Jimmy Butler MVP? It costs such and such. Here's my column on why Jimmy Butler should have been MVP. Yeah, you lost your vote.
Wait a minute. So I see, because I disagree.
James doesn't like that because he's a content creator.
But I disagree, because that's what I'm asking for. if you make your vote, all I need is for you to back it up and make it public.
No. So I think people throw their vote away to create content. That's my problem. There is no rational explanation for Monty McNair having, and I don't know that anyone wrote a column on this, but there's no rational explanation for Monty McNair having a vote, a first place vote in GM of the year, executive of the year. If Jason Anderson, Jason did not do that. Jason Anderson writes a column because he did it. Here's why I voted for Monty McNair. No, you can't have it because you're just trying to get clicks on your column now. It's the people who LeBron James isn't worthy of the All NBA teams. Okay, you wrote a column on it, you lose your vote. I don't think Hollinger actually has a vote. Zach Lowe loses his vote. All those guys lose their vote
because public shaming, I think, should be okay as long as you're being public with what you did. Like whoever voted for Monty McNair. Yeah, I know you're trying to sell your little podcast and your little whatever,
I think that
I need to know who you are. I need to know exactly who the hell you are.
But I think, but what I'm saying is,
sorry, Jason.
I think that stuff. Well, no, that I think the executive award is voted on by executives.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
But like All NBA isn't. Sure as hell, no 6-man isn't. My point is, I feel like people talk. Bojan Bogdanovic got first place votes for 6-man. Like again, it's not. I don't know. Maybe there's no way to fix it.
I'm kind of the opinion that we need like a really, really good panel that decides these things. Like take it out of these guys
like Voice, they turn their chair around when
yeah, but more like 10 people in a room that, like are very, very like they're selected and and then we kind of let them make the decision because I don't like the media having a vote. Like the media shouldn't have a vote in 6-man of the year or specifically All NBA because if you can tie, so if like Fox gets All NBA 2 years in a row, he now is eligible for the Supermax at 35% of the salary cap. Well, why should media members be deciding who is getting paid like that?
Yeah.
And that to me is where it becomes really strange. And like, what if you have a media member who came out to Sacramento, like planning to write a story on De'Aaron Fox, and for whatever reason, because there are plenty of reasons, they never got the one-on-one with De'Aaron Fox that they thought they were going to get. And then they go home and they're angry because now their story's done. It's trashed. And the only thing they can write their story off of is like scrum settings and stuff like that. And now they walk away and go like, okay, I'm not voting for that guy. Like you don't want to give me the time of day. And it could be that the player didn't want to give that person time of day. It could also be that you had somebody else having a bad day and didn't want to give that person time of day. It could be that the NBA, decided that was a day that everyone had to go talk to referees or take team photos or whatever it might be. But that doesn't get like spelled out to the person and they walk away with like a bad taste in their mouth. Or they get a player on the road and that player is having a bad night and blows them off in a locker room. Boom. I don't think I'm not going to vote for that guy. He's not a good dude. Why would I give my vote to a guy who's a jerk? And then they walk away and they don't vote for somebody. So like, why is it that media has anything to do with this at all? It's something I don't understand. There should be some sort of, even if you have a group of people make an algorithm that makes sense and you just give it to people based off of a computer printing out who it is that the top 10 players are.
BCS MVP, baby.
There it is.
BCS MVP.
Yeah.
Nice job, James.
I like the panel idea. And we should be on it.
I agree. Because we're impartial, unless it comes to Drake and Kendrick, and then Kenny can't make a. But
I love you. I like Euphoria, man. That was a good track.
Yeah, you can't deny that one.
Really good track.
But I do like the idea of a panel. But again, everyone could complain. The Academy is essentially a panel,
right?
That's why I said there's no right answer to this. It's just remnants of still being frustrated that Malik Monk didn't get Sixth Man of the Year. By the way, we've got great news, James. We've determined Malik Monk is in fact not going anywhere.
Yeah.
As Orlando is interested in everyone from Paul George to Klay Thompson to D'Angelo Russell. I mean, Malik Monk has fallen down that list. If I'm Malik, I'm like, you know what, Monty? Give me the contract. I'm signing it right now.
Yeah, they got that wandering eye. Like
I mean, and not to, be dismissive of like this Paul George. Like they have we're seeing right now, Cleveland's a good team. I don't know what their future is. They're a good basketball team. Orlando's on the rise, and with money this year, they have an opportunity to make a splash.
They're looking for, no disrespect to Malik or they're looking for a big fish. Like that's what they're like. They're like, we've laid the groundwork. We got Paolo. Let's go get one of these top All NBA guys if we can. If they're in the prime or towards the end of their career, whatever the case may be, let's go get a big fish. I think that's their mindset right now.
I think it's possible that's their mindset, but I would also caution that they have the same problem that everyone else in the league has, and that is that their young players are getting closer and closer to getting paid. Franz Wagner is, he'll have to have his extension this summer, and next summer it will be Paolo Banchero, and they're going to have to pay those guys. And how do you build a team while being like fiscally responsible? I mean, again, I think this is a term you hear everywhere. Like I've heard so many different people. You don't want to be the Atlanta Hawks. And I get that, where you spend all this money trying to add these tertiary pieces, and then they don't put you over the top, and then you're in cap hell. And I mean, look at what's happening to the Phoenix Suns right now. Like, what exactly? They have no escape. There is no the best thing that could happen for them is that Kevin Durant demands out. That's like the best thing that could happen to the Phoenix Suns, because the rest of it is, hey, let's run it back, except for we don't have Royce O'Neal because we don't have any cap space and we can't bring him back. And you're going to have nothing but minimum scale contract guys, and they're going to have a tough time luring anyone on a minimum scale for a team that finished, 7th in the West and got bounced. Like, what are you going to do? So, it's more than just one off season. You have to think 2, 3, 4 years in advance, especially when you have a group of young players that are all on their first NBA contracts. And again, Franz Wagner is going to go from making $7 to $8 million a year, or maybe even a little bit less than that, to 29, 30. And how do you make up for that? How do you pick up the slack with that? And knowing that Banchero is going to get the same exact thing in the following summer. And what do you do with Jalen Suggs? You keep him? Do you not? Oh, we're talking about top 5 picks here. And so I think it's going to be complicated how Orlando attacks their offseason. But that's why I bring up, it makes more sense for them to chase a guy who makes $24, $25 million a year in Malik Monk than it would to chase a 33-year-old Paul George that wants $45 to $50 million a year. Or again, Klay Thompson that makes that kind of money. Just because you're going to run into this horrible buzzsaw that is NBA salary cap here in just a couple of years if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, all of that is true. And then we laid out the other day about how everybody might just be looking at let's just get to these next 2 years, and then
players.
Let's just get to these next 2 years, and then it's about to blow up like nitro. In that case,
the Donovan one. You got me thinking about the Donovan one. It's hard to say no when someone says, "Hey, Mr. Mitchell, would you like $270 million or whatever?" It's hard to say no with. Then when you realize it could be, God knows what, a year later. I don't even
know what his contract will look like. He got all NBAs. He's got all that stuff.
Upwards of 3. Well, probably well over 3. Yeah, it'll be, especially in Cleveland. If he stayed in Cleveland, it'd be
to clue James Hammond on it. We were talking about Cleveland and what they may have to do next, and then it always leads back to the Kings, right? Always like, well, damn, the Kings, make a risk. And the first thing was, if Donovan is like, man, I don't really want to be in Cleveland anymore. And the Cavs are like, all right, well, we got to trade you. Who would take a chance on him? And we said, well, what if the Kings took a chance? And we said, well, they take a chance, but the chance would be he's going to be a free agent because he has a player option. He's locked up for next year and a player option after that. And we're like, essentially, it's just going to be a 1-year deal. But like you laid out the other day, where he might normally opt out of that player option, he may just opt into that player option because that would line up with the media rights deal and the cap and all this other stuff. So you may take a chance on Donovan and get him for 2 years where it may be 1 in the past.
No, that's true. And the other thing running up against Donovan is the fact that he didn't play 65 games this year and he can't be all in NBA. And so in order for him to truly cap, he's gonna get to all NBA status. And I don't know that he can get to the 35% threshold at this point where again, Fox is going to have the same exact problem. I think it like even with Fox, like would he step in like this offseason or would he wait? Those are questions because last offseason, clearly the Kings offered him an extension, but it would be silly for him to take an extension right now. Like that would mean opting out of the final year and getting this other uh or just taking money that may not look the same 2 years from now. So, yeah, it's intriguing. I think everybody is yeah, like Rory says in the chat, the cap is only going up 10% a year. They are going to taper this thing, but it's gonna be a guaranteed 10%, and then on top of that, there's gonna be some way that the players get money back. So every player in the league might get more money than what it looks like, on their original deal. And then we'll have to see, like, there might not I mean, the players might ask for the smoothing to be higher than 10%, although it does look like that's what they've negotiated for the current CBA. It should be really, intriguing to see how it all plays out here long term. But you also have to understand that teams are going to be flush with money. So whether it is that like an individual contract goes like through the roof, or somebody says, okay, I don't mind paying luxury tax dollar because I have all this extra money that's coming in. Like there is a way for these teams to actually or the players to actually get a hold of a lot of this money.
What do you think about New Orleans? Kenny and I were talking about them pretty in depth after they embarrassed themselves in the playoffs after beating the Kings 6 times. I feel like their roster's really good. And Griff was, yeah, there's nothing left to like. We've looked at it all. We have to, we have to improve this. Like we've seen Zion play, we've seen Ingram play, we've seen them play together. All of this stuff, and then you start Zion, Ingram, Herb Jones. You start running through all these guys. Like this is a really talented roster, but playoff flame out against OKC or not, it felt like with the exception of one opponent, they really kind of struggled throughout the season. They never really found their footing to where it's like, hey, maybe for the briefest of moments in, I think it was February or March, where it's like, hey, New Orleans might be dangerous. Then all of a sudden it was like, no, no, they're not. No, they're fine. What is it with that team? And how can we get Herb Jones here?
Okay, so Herb Jones is going to be really. I hate being Debbie Downer, but Herb Jones is going to be really difficult to get your hands on because he makes
Oh,
12
I
million
was
this
just
year.
joking. Yeah.
Yeah, but he makes 12, 13, 14, and 15. So he's not the problem. The problem is that you have CJ McCollum making 33 this year and well this next year and 31 the year after that. And it's at Zion is at like almost 37, 39, 42, and then 45. And then Brandon Ingram's at 36. So even as we walk into this offseason, they're at $150 million right now. And that's without Jonas Valanciunas, Cody Zeller isn't that big of a deal. Najee Marshall is a free agent. Like Jose Alvarado has a team option, like $2 million, so that's not even considered in that. So they're already over the cap, and that's without their starting center. And so I expect them to be like super aggressive and trying to find something different, at least at the center position. Not that, Valanciunas has been bad for them. But that's where I could see, again, like Ingram going. If you think you can go get a center from a different team that would make more sense for your team, and would make more sense for the Pelicans. But I'm not sure. Like, I think we have a couple of teams that are kind of stuck in this no man's land, and the Kings are being one of those, right? The Kings are right around the same exact salary that we're seeing for the Pelicans. I think they're 152 million for dedicated salary for next year. And I think the only glimmer of hope the Kings have is, like the Pelicans, they have a couple of young players that can get way better. And, and Keegan, and of course, was it Trey Murphy over there? Um, so that's one positive for both of these teams. But also they have the same problem that eventually you're going to have to pay all of those guys. And so you're trying to be budget conscious, and you're trying not to go crazy, because for as much as, they're already paying these other three guys 30 million bucks, they got another guy sitting right there. You're going to have to come close to that in Murphy. And so it's a slippery slope. And that, again, that's why locking up, Herb Jones for, a totally reasonable contract is absolutely brilliant, because that guy's at like 9%, 8% of the cap from here on out. And that's really, really good for them. So that's why I don't think you'll be able to get him. But I do think that they could move off of Ingram. It's just whether or not you have sort of the things that they're looking for that could, help put them over the hump or give them a different look than what they have right now. And I'm not sure that the Kings have that.
All right. We'll come back. More
Sorry.
with James Ham. No, it's fine. We're gonna fix the Kings before the day's over. I'm telling you, Steelo and KC, along with our man James Ham from the Insiders here on Sacramento Sports Leader ESPN 1320. I almost kept going. I looked. Oh.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Like, I don't know what you mean by Steven Adams. Maybe I don't know if Steven Adams is ever gonna play basketball again. Even if he does, I don't think he wasn't the player that you thought he was the last like 2 years, and maybe even 3. And I don't know how long his like viability as a player is at this point, which is unfortunate, because he's one of my favorite guys to like run into.
I might.
I agree with this too, Bryce.
Oh my!
If I were the Kings, like Jonas, if he was willing to take a reserve role and then play minutes alongside Sabonis, that would be intriguing. I don't know. He's tough, but full mid-level exception money. Like, I don't think he's getting a lot higher than that. I haven't heard Matt George's guesses. Yeah, Sakir and DeBagley, the MLE is at 12.8 million for this year. And if you're signing someone else as free agent, it's like a 4-year 54, something like that.
What you said.
Tyrese Maxey traveled on the 4-point play.
Oh,
Oopsie.
Well,
imagine that.
It's hard to believe officials missed something in a crucial moment. Just don't believe it, gentlemen.
I almost never defend the officials, but I will defend them on that. It didn't look like a travel in real time. Like I wouldn't.
I didn't. It wasn't on my radar.
I wouldn't have thought that
at all.
And James, you said that the mid-level can be part of a trade, right? Like you can use that money to absorb like somebody come for a trade.
Yeah, actually, this is the first year you can use both your mid-level and your biannual exception as trade chips. Now, they can't be aggregated. So that means that you can't take a player and an MLE and trade it. It can be part of a larger trade, but most NBA trades, you see like a 5 for or a 3-player for 2-player swap. They're usually a lot more complicated than that. Like, the way the trade actually looks when it's broken down is like a bunch like 2 small trades and then a trade for an exception, and then one other team creates an exception out of that trade. They're usually small individual trades that are packaged into one giant trade, and that's how most NBA trades, again, they're, like, super complicated. But you can trade the MLE, but you can't take a player for more than 4 years, and you can't go above the MLE to do it. So it's literally is like $12.8 million bucks. If you can find a player that makes $12.7 million, you literally can trade that. You can absorb them into your contract space using the MLE. And then the other team would earn a trade exception at that value, basically. The biannual exception is like 4.4 or 4.6, something like that. And it's the same thing, but you have to remember that your biannual exception is only 2 years. So you could only take back a player with 2 years left on a deal, that's below that dollar figure. It's at that dollar figure or below.
It's a lot going on.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
we're back.
and
James. We're back,
All right.
James. James, you want to pick up right where you left off? You are kind of masterful at this. You were breaking down the biannual exceptions and the differences between that, the mid-level, and some of the things that the Kings may have at their disposal this coming off season.
Yeah, so it's not as bleak as everyone thinks it is at all. Like, first of all, the Kings have the 13th pick in the NBA draft that they can trade. They can't trade it ahead of time, but they can trade it like July 1st. They can draft a player for another team and then make that trade as soon as a new NBA like calendar year begins, right? So that's one avenue that they can get better. But then this is the first year the new CBA allows for the mid-level exception, which is 12.8 million bucks, and the biannual exception, which is like 4.6 or 4.7, I think it is. Um, and the Kings have their biannual exception because a biannual means it's every other year. If you use it one year, you can't use it the next. They have theirs from last year. You can use that as like basically as a trade exception, which was never allowed in the past. So what you can do is you can take that pick, I mean, that exception, and you basically, if there's a player who makes like 12.7 million bucks and his contract is not longer than what is allowed with the mid-level exception, which is 4 years, you could accept that player into your contract space. So, like, again, a player like, well, you mentioned Herb Jones, right? Herb Jones' contract is less than the mid-level exception this coming year. And so technically speaking, if they wanted to trade Herb Jones, you could actually take in Herb Jones without sending a single thing back to them. You can send back, of course they'd want like a first round pick or whatever, but technically speaking, you don't have to send anything back. And then for the other team, it creates a trade exception at that dollar amount. And then the same for the biannual exception. The biannual exception, the difference is it's only good for 2 years. That's the maximum length of a contract that you can sign someone to the biannual exception. And so that means that you could go out and find a player who makes like 4.4 million bucks and trade your exception to a team that, say, is well over the salary cap, take back that player, and as long as his contract is only 2 years, you can pull that off by just using your exception. And so these are all different mechanisms that are put into place. They also bumped up all the dollar amounts when it comes to what you can trade. And I went back and did all the research on this like today and yesterday. So if you have a player on your team that makes 7.5 million or less, and for the Kings, I mean, they have a bunch of like minimum scale guys, but just imagine like that's Davion, it's Chris Duarte, and it's Sasha Vezenkov, which are pushing up towards that number. In the new CBA, you can trade those guys for twice their value, plus or minus $250,000 to make sure that the dollars and cents work. So that means that you can trade, let's just say Davion Mitchell is $6 million. You could trade him to a team and take back up to $12 million in salary cap space, plus or minus 250,000. You can also do this in aggregate, which means that you can take 2 of those players or 3 of those players. And let's just say you had 2 of those players. You could trade Davion and Chris Duarte, which make roughly $12 million together, and bring back up to $24 million in salary. You could make it a third player and say you throw in Sasha Vezenkov, which is closer to $7 million. So now we're looking at, jumping from $24 million to $38 million in salary cap space that you could take back. And the reason why this matters is that there are teams that are way over the salary cap, and the new salary cap rules are going to be crazy. So like the Lakers, the Warriors in this particular year, they're paying like 170 million in salary cap space in luxury tax penalty. In the new CBA, if they have the same dollar amount and they owe that same amount, it would be 234 million or something. That's the new penalties. So think how much money you could save a team by sending them 12 million bucks of expiring contracts and taking back, 24 million, or trading them $19 million in contracts and taking back a full $38 million in contracts. And so you could literally save somebody, 10, 15, 30, 50, 70 million dollars. It just depends on where they're at in the luxury tax. So these are all mechanisms that you can do things with. And I know some people are like out there saying, well, if you sign Monk and you sign someone using your mid-level exception, then you're going to run out of salary cap space and you're going to be in the luxury tax yourself. It's like, well, maybe, because you have to understand that when you make some big trade, that doesn't preclude you from going out and taking a couple of your other players and doing the reverse and freeing up your own cap space with a team that maybe would like to have a player that is making 6 to 7 million, and they don't want to go spend their mid-level exception, and they're willing to take back one of your players inside of that mid-level exception. And just for sake of argument, again, we're talking about, Davion Mitchell making around 6 and Duarte making around 6. You can package those 2 together and trade them to somebody else for a mid-level exception and just take back a a roster, a trade exception in a deal like that, and just clear 12 million bucks off your books. So like there are all kinds of mechanisms where the Kings can improve their roster. It's just whether or not they find the right deals and they find the right dance partner. But again, the mechanisms are in place.
And with all that too, and you sign Monk and make some trades and stuff like that to kind of put you close to or into the luxury tax. I know our guy Rory, who's in the chat, is always talking about how cheap Vivek is, and he has never paid in the luxury. And I was like, this is a little unfair because, yeah, would we want him to play the luxury for Buddy Hield and Willie Cauley-Stein? Like, no, who would do that?
Yeah, the whole thing about Vivek's unwillingness to spend doesn't make sense.
No, and look, I don't know if he would, but we also don't know that he wouldn't. And people just like, because he hasn't before, that he wouldn't go into the luxury tax. Well, he hasn't had a team potentially this good to be worth paying extra money for. So I think that needs to be factored in as well when you talk about, whether or not they pay that type of money. Like maybe with this group, they pay that type of money instead of for Rondo being here.
Yeah, I don't think it's been tested yet whether Vivek would pay or not. And part of that is because
we're getting close.
Yeah, we are getting close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but we're also getting close when television money's about to come in. So
That's a good point, James.
that might change something. But sort of the point that I would make about Vivek is you have to have, like, you got to hit it in the draft. So the team that we talk about that's way over the cap, right, is a team like the Golden State Warriors. The reason why the Warriors are like in the luxury tax so heavily is, sure, they go out and they trade for a guy like Wiggins and stuff like that. But at it's their own draft picks that are now in their third contracts, right? So the biggest way you go over the tax and like way up high is by having your De'Aaron Fox go from making $7 million one year to 27 the next. And then, but when they hit their third contract, that isn't the same. It's a player going from 36 million to 48 million, and all of a sudden they're eating up all of your cap space. And so it makes it really difficult to stay competitive. And, again, the NBA is putting in all these constrictions or restrictions to stop all of that craziness. But again, it's hard because like we look at last offseason, the Kings, they did a renegotiate and extend with Sabonis, and then they didn't have like the only mechanism they had to go out and add like another great player would have been like if they traded for somebody and then like got their bird rights and then gave them a monster extension the next year. They could have used, I think the Kings still left their mid-level exception on the floor this last year, or at least they used part of that for Sasha. But there wasn't a ton of ways in order for the Kings to like make a deal that would have like jumped them 20 million bucks into the luxury tax. There just wasn't. There wasn't a way to do it. Even when you're a cap space team, like your cap space is what it is. You can't go well above your cap space, and the Kings ate up all their cap space and then went and signed Trey Lyles to his contract. And they did go over the cap, and they're just below the luxury. And we'd have to see, like, I would want my team to be a guaranteed playoff team to start paying out big luxury tax dollars, and anything is big luxury tax dollars. But that's how I would kind of look at it.
The interesting thing after breaking all of that down the way that you did, James, is in terms of just available money, there aren't very many teams that have a lot. Like there aren't a ton of teams that they've got money to spend. Like there's like a small handful, and that's why Orlando keeps coming up as it pertains to Malik Monk. It's because Orlando is going to have some money to spend, but there really aren't a ton of teams that have that type of space available.
Yeah, and I think some of the teams that are out there that do have cap space, they're not somewhere where anyone wants to go.
I think Detroit is another one.
Detroit, yeah. I think
San Antonio, maybe.
Toronto got money, I think.
San Antonio, I think, has money though, but they'll probably get people to sign there.
Well, but look, Detroit is a perpetual loser. Like, and it doesn't matter. Like,
that's not nice.
He's not wrong, but it's funny.
That's aggressive.
Well, no, they are. Plus, let's look at Toronto, where if you sign in Toronto, the government takes half your taxes in Toronto, right? They take half your income in Toronto. It's literally like almost 50%.
It's a country of California. All right.
Well, but even California is less than that. And you have to remember that when players play in the United States, they get taxed at whatever the amount is while they're in the States. So like when you play a game in New York, you pay New York taxes for that game. Like that's the way, like, even if you're a California employee, it works out differently. So yeah, let's see. Brett Huff in the chat. How dare me talk about his Canadian taxes? Your Canadian taxes, I mean, they pay for like socialized healthcare and a whole bunch of other stuff. But that's where I would kind of look at some of these other. I think Charlotte is another team, and like, who in their right mind wants to go to Charlotte? No one wants to go to Charlotte right now. And
LaMelo's next back tattoo.
I'm about to say the tattoo artists of America want to.
Yeah. So that's where I would say like Philadelphia and Orlando are going to be like hotbeds for free agents that are looking for their payday. But the rest of the teams in the league, they just aren't in a position to really do something. And, we could even like look at what Ballmer does down in with the Clippers. They're able, like, they're really good with the cap, and they've been able to sneak players under the cap and then sign them to like ridiculous deals. But again, it came all in one offseason when they had like nothing on their books. And then they build. And then they're able to get these other players to come in that probably shouldn't be there, like a Russell Westbrook, who took pennies on the dollar to join in. But there's just not a lot of cap space. And teams like the Clippers that could lose Paul George, just because they lose Paul George, I think they're still over the cap. So Like that's where it's going to become really difficult for them to maintain. And it's what the Lakers did this last year. The Lakers, LeBron James is scheduled to make $51 million, but he can renegotiate that. He can opt out and then get a bigger deal. Like they're not going to have any cap space. Even if he walks away, they're still going to have plenty of of salary cap already taken because they've got AD, plus they signed Hachimura, plus they signed all of these pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think even D'Angelo Russell has like a $25 million or $23 million like player option for next year. They got a bunch of player options that most of the players, guys like Casey's guy, Cam Reddish, there's no way he's going to opt out of that deal.
Damn.
Like, why would he opt out? He hasn't played at all hardly, and injuries wiped out much of his season. Like, he'd be silly to walk away from $3 million. So there's a lot of teams that are just not in good salary cap space outside of, like, again, Orlando, Philadelphia, and then the rest of them all have like pretty sketchy question marks. Even San Antonio, you got to find the right free agent that wants to go to San Antonio.
And I'm thinking about Toronto. We always talk about this here in Sacramento. Like, when was the last time they signed a free agent? When was the last time Toronto signed a free agent?
It's a good question. I don't believe I have an answer to that.
Did they drafted DeMar?
Yeah, they're able to get their own guys, even when they traded for Jakob Poeltl to take him back because they had him originally. They were able to get him to sign an extension. Boucher signed an extension, but it's usually that Boucher like level player that they're able to get, and not someone bigger.
Homegrown guys, I guess. DeMar and trade for Kawhi.
They don't know what's going on.
Got Drake.
They don't know. Well, they got Drake. He might be on the market if he don't win.
Well,
yeah. It's possible even the Raptors will diss that guy at this point.
Well, there you go, James. Get in on the act. I love it.
I
love it.
The people they be re-signing and retaining their players because they don't know no better.
No.
They don't know what else is out there. They get to the States and be like, wait a minute.
But I'll say this again. I know that I don't think that team is as bad as their record.
Which team?
They're not that good.
The Toronto Raptors.
They're not that good. You got Scotty, you got Boucher. They're probably gonna lose Gary Trent.
They lost like it felt like 20 games in a row.
End, they were trying. They were trying, and then RJ had that personal issue.
Yeah.
That's a top 10 team to me.
Potentially
might be 9.
Potentially,
it might be 9 or 10.
11.
But I think that's a top 10 team. They have I don't know.
They have Scotty Barnes, who's the face of the NBA.
Well, I don't know who told you that. But
Scotty Barnes.
Well, that's pretty close. Scotty Barnes.
He's
gonna take Sacramento to the promised land.
He's the face of the NBA. Like
he would have helped out a lot.
Yeah, I don't think Toronto is one of those teams that you really have to be stressed out about.
Well, I'm not. But actually, as you were saying all of that, what I really got to thinking was like, do some of these teams in the West fall off a little bit? Phoenix, LA,
yes, Phoenix is
both LA, and New Orleans.
Oh,
wow!
Well,
why did you say that so gleefully? New Orleans,
because I'm happy.
Golden State, yeah.
I think Golden State could be exactly the same next year.
That's not very good.
It's top 10, right?
Yeah,
it was top 10.
Yeah,
playing Kings had to beat them to get into the play, and they weren't much better.
Whatchamacallit, maybe Houston takes their place this year. Maybe Houston finishes the job, finishes their story, and puts the Warriors on 11th.
No.
Yeah, somebody asked. Houston is at. Yeah, Houston is at $129 million in cap space right now for next season, and that means they have no cap space. So
guys, you had your offseason. You had your moment. Settle down.
Yeah. My boy Deshaun Tate is a free agent too. I'd like to see him in Sacramento.
Yep. Yeah, we had that discussion the other day.
I always forget he's the young man they drafted, right? And traded.
Nah, they might have drafted him, but he was like a second round guy, maybe undrafted or something like that.
Well, then they have Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore is taking his spot. Cam Whitmore is a stud.
Yeah,
He wasn't going to fall to the Kings at 24. I think he went at number 20. But he was a top 4 pick. Most people thought coming into that draft, and then personality questions like popped up. So, yeah. Boy, did you see Michael Porter Jr., another one of his brothers, was arrested for DUI yesterday. Like, first of all, I didn't know that guy had so many brothers, but one of them has been banned from the league. One of them is serving 6 years in prison for a DUI crash that killed somebody. And now the youngest brother is just picked up a DUI as well, it looks like.
I also want to be clear, when James says he has brothers, they're actual blood brothers. That's probably where the use of that term ends with that family.
Yeah.
That has been in its simplest phrasing, that is a unique collection of individuals.
I'd agree.
Yeah. And not
but the basketball player can still hit some big shots.
Man, and he's been cooking in these playoffs. He can
still hit some big shots.
He's been incredible. Yeah. Yeah.
Who would have thought he would have been the most put together one?
Yeah, the guy with 3 back surgeries before 20 is the one who's backpacking the whole family at this point.
And he still say some.
Well, I wasn't even talking about the back surgeries. I was just talking about the idiotic things that he says out loud.
Oh yeah.
But I don't know. That team is rolling, man. They James. I mean, I feel so good about a conversation we had a couple of days ago on your show. That team is playing with a very high level of championship confidence.
Oh, they look unbeatable.
People say they look unbeatable. That's us like watching them. To me, they take the floor believing they're unbeatable. And guys can say that, like coaches can say that, all this stuff. I know your boy said that about his basketball team the other day.
Oh,
Doc.
Oh, well, yeah, Doc
said he knew his shoot around. Like, this team was prepared. They were ready to win.
What do you know?
That they were prepared to win.
That's not what he said.
I'm not saying no. I know what you're doing. I'm not saying